We're really pleased to have two presentations today. Dr. Marilyn Taylor from the School of Leadership Studies here at RRU is also RRU's representative to SSHRC leaders. And she's going to be talking to us about SSHRC, the BC region, and RRU tracks and possibilities. And we also have Ursula Gobel, the AVP for Future Challenges at SSHRC, joining us remotely from Ottawa. Thanks for joining us. And this is her presentation here, advancing the contributions of the social sciences and humanities towards a better future for Canada and the world. Thank you to both of our presenters. I'll hand over to Marilyn. Cheers.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about something I really think is wonderful. I think about 7 years ago, Mary Bernard, our Associate Vice President for Research, who is here with us today, invited me to represent Royal Roads at the SSHRC Leaders, which was a new venture for SSHRC. In actual fact, in my whole career, I've been involved in social science, and I've always been interested in the applied part of it. I taught at an applied social science department at Concordia University for a number of years, and one of the reasons it's a treat to be at Royal Roads is that we are an interdisciplinary and applied university. And so what goes on here is always a joy. What I have experienced from SSHRC over my career has been getting better and better. It used to be that applied social knowledge was hard to get on the agenda with formal social science grants and applications and so on. And in actual fact, in my experience over the last 6 years of representing us here at Royal Roads to SSHRC, it has been an amazing journey. And today, we will be looking at some of the points in that journey as it comes to fruition. And the journey really was when Chad Gaffield picked up the job of president at SSHRC. The existence of SSHRC Leaders is an example of what his vision was, which is that the Granting Council needed much better engagement with universities across the country. So, in actual fact, we meet twice a year, and there's a network of people which, after a number of years, gets to know one another, and there's this amazing human thing that happens, and really opens SSHRC up in ways that hadn't been the case before. The other thing that happened 2 years ago, actually it was dreamt up before that, but it started 2 years ago, was in 2012. SSHRC is, many times there have been reviews of SSHRC's funding priorities, and but it's been a much more closed thing than occurred. 2 years ago was all of a sudden an explosion into the world of SSHRC seeking knowledge and information and consultation about its funding priorities. And there were, I was privileged to head the BC region on that. Each region had a number of scholars who stepped up to the plate and went out in the world and talked to all kinds of people besides academics about what in the world SSHRC needed to pay attention to prepare Canada for 2020 and 2030. So that's, I think, a good segue, Ursula. I want to thank you. Ursula, we are very privileged to have by satellite here, maybe someday in person. Ursula Gobel, who is the Associate Vice President at SSHRC for Future Challenges. And she's full of excitement and information about how we're going to pick up from, first of all, what came out of that consultation overall, and then where it's moving. She will speak to you for a period of time, and then when we get to a close on that, I want to offer you a vision of what we've been doing in the BC region about trying to carry on that spirit of connection between the university and the wider world so that, in fact, social knowledge gets used, and we, in fact, do come up with a better world. So, Ursula, it's over to you. Thank you again for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you so much for the invitation, and Marilyn, for your wonderful introduction. Explosions, connecting, ideas, enthusiasm, that is truly representative in terms, certainly, the energy here at SSHRC, and it has been for certainly my tenure here in 7 years, but also the engagement of our research community has been absolutely enthusiastic. So I'm going to go through a few slides, and Marilyn, I'm going to turn to you that we can intuitively imagine which slide goes next as you've got the deck. And before I jump right into Imagine Canada's Future and how the process in terms of how we identified what those future challenges for Canada are, I just hope to bring everyone to the same place, if you will, to see how, in fact, we position the value of social sciences and humanities in all the work that we do. Often, when one is introduced, and certainly for myself and being with SSHRC, the Social Science Humanities Research Council, is like, well, what are the social sciences and humanities? And rather go through a list of over 30 disciplines, we really get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter in today's society has never been more critical. And the recognition that we, as a community, are focused on people, on human behavior and human thought, and with that view to build a better future. And that has truly resonated in all the engagement that we have done, not only with the research community, but of course, across all sectors of society, with parliamentarians, members of civil society across all sectors, private sector and non-for-profit. And as we look to all elements of our society today, democratic society, just society, civil society, the focus on human decision-making in the past and the present is truly being recognized to advance the initiatives and the goals that we see with all with whom we engage. And so what role does SSHRC play in that? Well, in the next slide, through our programs and our support, we really focus on developing talent, supporting great ideas, the very best ideas. And that supports insights and helps generate insights, if you will, on an array of issues, both in the past and the present and for the future. And Marilyn expressed the reference to connection, and that has been really critical for us in terms of how do we enhance connections across campus, and then from campus also with other sectors of society. And so through the 7 years, and I'll go back 4 years now, we recognized what some of the barriers were within our own program architecture that would enable us to really advance the contributions of social science humanities. So we went through, and some of you in the room may be familiar with our program architecture renewal, and that's the next slide, Marilyn. We went from over 30 programs to 3. And of course, this was an extensive engagement exercise with the research community as well, and really focus on the fundamental priorities, not priorities, but core principles of what we were all about. And so it is about developing talent. It is supporting the best ideas that generate those insights and facilitating those connections. And then across all 3 programs now, we have partnership opportunities. And so the next slide, you'll see within each of these programs, we have different funding opportunities, still a minimal amount. For the talent, of course, we have all of our scholarships and fellowships. For the Insight program, we recognized as well the opportunity to support emerging scholars. And this is a critical issue for SSHRC as well. And so by offering Insight development grants that enable emerging scholars or supporting ideas that or as a first step, if you will, facilitates through smaller grants, shorter periods of time, those ideas to be developed. And then, of course, more comprehensive insight grants. And then we move to the connection grants, which support outreach activities, conferences, and our support for journals. And then the partnership grants, which have been very successful in terms of interest and demand, also have those 2-tiered options: partnership development grants to provide that initial opportunity to work together in slightly larger teams over a shorter period of time, to then a much more comprehensive partnership development grant, which is over long term. So that program architecture was absolutely critical for us to then advance our other initiatives, if you will. But the key principles with the program architecture renewal also speak to the Imagining Canada's Future initiative in some way. Because what we want to ensure is that we provide an ecosystem, if you will, of simplicity, of flexibility, because in the past, if a scholar had a great idea, a great project, if it didn't fit into one of those over 30 boxes, there was no place for that scholar to go. Or if, as a council, we had to respond to annual federal budgets that designated certain funding priorities, we had to create another box. So from a simply administrative perspective, you can imagine the complexity of having to administer over 30 programs. So that principle of flexibility, but most fundamental, is excellence. And so through the whole program architecture renewal, we also looked at all of our merit review processes and our adjudication processes to ensure that those also represented those guiding principles. So if we look at our budget in the next slide, I just pulled up actually the 12-13 budget, just to give you an approximation of where you can see across those three programs, the majority still is devoted to supporting the talent, to supporting our students. And even in the Insight program, we recognize, of course, indirectly support of development of talent for students. But that gives you certainly a visual of how our budget is distributed. So when we look at the 2014 budget in the next slide, some of you may be aware that there was an increase to SSHRC's budget. So we thank all those who worked with us collaboratively to demonstrate the value of social sciences and humanities. So a $7 million increase to our base budget. And then as well, a number of programs that were also introduced. The Canada First Research Excellence Fund, which will be a tri-council. I won't go into that too much at the moment, but you may be aware that SSHRC is also responsible for administering a number of tri-council programs, including the Canada Research Chairs Program, Canada Excellence Research Chairs Program, and the Indirect Cost Program. So here we have another very, very, very important and obviously very significant investment in research in Canada that we will be that we are now responsible for administering, and news of that will come forward in the following few months. And then an additional funding support in the area of social innovation. And this is critical for us. So you can see it's dedicated to colleges, but colleges, of course, also work with universities. The recognition of social innovation in our society. We saw that also as related to opportunities for students now to receive internships from MyTax. MyTax provided internships for students in the area working with industry and business, and now that has been opened up to non-for-profits. So that was very, very welcoming news for us and for the community. So I just wanted to start with that, just to give you a little overview of SSHRC. Certainly in the next year or through this year, we're focused on three critical priorities, and our efforts are focused on the continued implementation of that program architecture that I described. We are 2 years in, so we are clearly monitoring how that is working, and the SSHRC Leaders Network that Marilyn is a member of is critical for providing us with those insights in terms of how that implementation is resonating and the impact of that across our country. The Imagining Canada's Future initiative, which I'll describe very shortly, and then our focus on digital scholarship and the work that we've been doing in the area of advancing digital scholarship internationally, and Canada is certainly being recognized as a leader here over the past few years. And Marilyn, you described a few of great achievements and accomplishments under Dr. Gaffield's leadership, and digital scholarship is clearly another one. His leadership internationally in the area of big data and digital scholarship has resonated internationally, and has seen the creation of the Digging into Data collaboration internationally that SSHRC has led, and now most recently the Transatlantic Platform collaboration. SSHRC is the leader for North America, working with other countries to really look at opportunities of greater collaboration, removing barriers, and looking at best practices. And so big data, or if you will, digital scholarship is the key focus for that. So I'm going to turn a little bit now to Imagining Canada's Future. Marilyn, you did a great job of describing the start of that, and I'll just take us back to really what the guiding principle for that was. Because yes, we've been so focused in the last 2 years on the consultation and the identification of what has resulted in 6 future challenge areas and 4 cross-cutting themes. But we have to remember why we did this. And all of our work at SSHRC is truly, truly focused on enhancing the contributions of social science humanities to Canadian society now and in the future, and doing that not only in terms of what we can do in terms of program architecture, but also enhancing the collaboration externally and really ensuring that that contribution is recognized across all sectors of society. And so with the Imagining Canada's Future, we made a commitment. We made a commitment to ensure that the benefits of research and talent development contribute and are fully realized to address societal challenges and opportunities in the future. And that's a commitment now, certainly with the creation of an Associate Vice President in Future Challenges and a directorate that we are really going to be focused on in the coming years. So you can move to the next slide. So that contribution also we recognize can lead to new intellectual, economic, social, and cultural value for all Canadians. So this has truly, truly been the guiding inspiration and the principle for Imagining Canada's Future. You can click through a few of those so you can just read what I just said. So now in terms of the process, and Marilyn was absolutely correct, we undertook an extensive 2-year consultative foresight exercise across Canada, internationally. We had a range of advisory groups to really identify, well, what are the challenges for Canada in a global context in the next 5, 10, and 20 years? And so that exercise resulted in the identification of 6 challenges, and these were endorsed by our Governing Council last June. So you'll see here, and I'll just take a clockwise approach here, what might the implications of global peak population be for Canada? What effects will the quest for energy and natural resources have on our society and our position on the world stage? You know, how are the experiences and aspirations of Aboriginal peoples in Canada, how are they essential to building a successful shared future? What new ways of learning, and particularly in higher education, will Canadians need to thrive in an evolving society and a labour market? And what knowledge will Canada need to continue to thrive in an interconnected, evolving global landscape? And how can emerging technologies be leveraged to benefit Canadians? So these are the broad 6 challenges that were identified. But what's very important, and I believe this is very critical also for Royal Roads in terms of the approach that Marilyn has taken and the engagement that Marilyn has led in looking at those 4 cross-cutting themes in the center there. Sustainable, resilient communities, creativity, innovation, and prosperity, values, culture, inclusion and diversity, governance, and institutions. So those are themes that clearly cut across all 6 challenges. Now, these are broadly defined. And there are a number of, if you look at you can check on our website, there are a number of sub-themes that can also provide some context in certain terms of some of the issues that have come forward. And so now that these have been identified, and certainly in the last 6 months, we've really focused on building some momentum. In the next 3 to 4 months, we'll be developing the strategy, a concrete strategy to advance our approach and to create a framework in terms of how we're going to advance our contributions across these 6 areas. But I just want to take a few minutes to go through all these activities that have transpired in the last 6 months, because it's a demonstration of, or they illustrate very well, rather, how the engagement and the opportunities, the potential to really leverage across all campuses the contribution of social science humanities, but also the pickup, if you will, the knowledge mobilization opportunities, so that the insights can be connected to those who can benefit from those insights, and then continually be able to leverage that to build even further. So the next slide, just very quickly, I'll go through a number of these activities, beginning actually last fall. And Marilyn, I believe that you were part of number of our roundtables. Actually, we've gone over a slide. This speaks a little bit to what I was speaking to you about. Clearly, the advancing the contributions of the social science to meet these long-term goals were identified as our clear goal. Actually, go to the next slide, if you will, and just click. There you go. And so those challenges are now integrated or will be integrated into our program architecture. And I'll speak a little bit very shortly about how we're doing that in a shift, if you will, from a traditional approach of identifying research priority areas and funding envelopes. But we're taking an approach that ensures their integration across all of our program offerings in a much more holistic way. But these, of course, the integration of these future challenges complement all our activities, both corporate and program related. So in the next slide, now I'll get to a few of the activities that we've been undertaking. So again, a little bit clockwise here, but beginning with, I'll say 11 o'clock. So last fall, we had in Canada the World Social Sciences Forum that brought together the social sciences and humanities research community around the world to Montreal. And we hosted a number of panels there to bring to light, again, this exercise. We focused on how the approach in terms of how we identified the future challenge areas and the role that the SSHRC leaders played in hosting regional events across the country and sharing their process. And Marilyn, you played a key role there, so you can speak to that maybe a little bit in your presentation as well. And then that continued engagement in terms of regional panels that were held in the last 3 months across the country. And then most recently, a number of knowledge mobilization events. And so these events were an opportunity for universities to engage with the public, with private sector leaders, and the leaders had the choice, the universities had the choice of selecting one or two or up to two of the challenge areas, because we want to ensure that we could dig deep a little bit on some of these areas, and the response was absolutely tremendous. We had collectively close to 16 universities participate and within an 8-week period on a range of these knowledge mobilization events. That really gave us an insight in terms of that, again, that potential, that opportunity. It was interesting to see out of all the areas, two emerged as the most popular, if you will, the emerging digital technologies and the challenge related to the experience and aspirations of Aboriginal peoples. But a few, of course, cross-cutting themes as it relates to globalization as well and higher education. Last fall, we initiated what has now become an annual knowledge synthesis grant opportunity. These are smaller grants, up to 20 or so, that we provide on a particular topic. And so these knowledge synthesis grants this year focused on skills development and labor markets. And so we were able to leverage that activity, if you will, to then also create a number of knowledge mobilization events. So we had 16 scholars who presented their research on the current state of knowledge, the research capacity on that particular area of labor markets and skills development. And we also had partners with, we had federal partners, and then we also were able to release those reports at the same time as we had op-eds, we had a dedicated issue of policy options. We had workshops here in Ottawa. So again, really maximizing the insights to then engage those who can really benefit from the research. Our recent Storytellers Challenge, you may be familiar with the Storytellers Challenge. Railroads did very well in our inaugural year last year, in fact, and had a number of students who became our top 25 storytellers, and as well a winner in the top 5. And so this year we saw a 70% increase of entries among students for the Storytellers Challenge. And what we're looking at now is mapping the areas of research and interest of the students and the topic areas as those align with the future challenge areas. SSHRC has been a long-standing partner and supporter of the Parliamentary Internship Program in Ottawa. And so this is an opportunity for interns in the social sciences and humanities to work with members of parliament. It's nonpartisan. And so there's a history of alumni, if you will. So we engaged a number of parliament interns who are alumni, but still students, to work with us in identifying among the 6 challenge areas opportunities to highlight existing research that we support and create a whole array of research stories. And so that was very successful, and we'll be rolling out those research stories in the next few weeks. If we look at other activities at SSHRC that relate to these 6 challenge areas within our own activities here, in addition to the program architecture implementation, we're focused on, for example, and I did mention digital scholarship as being one of our primary priorities here in terms of advancing digital scholarship in Canada. And so under the leadership of our Executive Vice President, Ted Hewitt, we're developing now a policy framework for data management. There's been tri-council work on open access, and so our work on that particular dossier, on those dossiers, are one example, or examples of our contribution again to advancing one of the challenge areas. We are currently looking at our Aboriginal research strategy. We've had one in existence for many, many years, and now we've engaged scholars and members of society across society to create an Aboriginal Advisory Council, to help us ensure that as we revise that Aboriginal research strategy, the key principles that we have adopted since our early days of supporting research in the area are maintained, and that's certainly working with Aboriginal peoples in any research that is supported by SSHRC. Engagement and outreach continues extensively. Certainly the branding and this event today is an example of the tremendous opportunities to raise the profile for the initiative, but also the engagement in terms of contributing to these 6 challenge areas. So the next slide, in terms of what we're focused on now, is and I did mention that we are working on developing the strategy, the multi-year strategy, but we really need to set some baselines because we want to ensure that it is measurable, that there are opportunities to participate, but that we can advance. And so right now, when we focus on the program architecture implementation, as I mentioned, we are integrating it into our 14-15 competition year. So on June 14th, we use the term one launch. So we launch the competition literature, if you will, the program literature that will address the competition year. And so you'll see that there will be reference to Imagining Canada's Future and the future challenge areas there. What is very different and is a real shift for SSHRC, and it will be a shift, I think, quite a bit for our research community as well, is that there are no tick boxes. In the past, SSHRC has had boxes to identify research priority areas, and we asked applicants to tick the box if they felt or as they aligned their research proposal to a priority area. That will not be the case here with future challenges. There are no thumbs on the scale, if you will. There is no dedicated funding envelopes to any particular challenge area, because we feel very, very strongly that our research community has provided thought leadership. You go back to the 1980s, where significant research was being undertaken on the topic of aging and how that has contributed to policy over the years. When we look at the area of digital scholarship and digital humanities, if you will, if you look at the last 20 years and the role that Canadian scholars have played, Canadian institutions have played in advancing the digital humanities. And so what we will be doing after each competition and after they are adjudicated is we will be able to search through that database to identify among the applicants how those projects, how those applications have aligned with the topics that are addressed in the future challenge areas. That will be one mechanism. Another mechanism we are also looking at currently, our internal data analysis over the last 10 years of what SSHRC has funded. How has that mapped out and aligned itself with the future challenge areas? So data analysis will be absolutely critical in helping guide our outreach and knowledge mobilization activities. But that's a very, very distinct and important shift. At the same time, I did mention data and content analysis. In addition to looking at upcoming competitions and past competitions, we did commission a number of reports by Canadian scholars, experts in their fields on these particular 6 challenge areas. And we are looking at those reports now, and they are a state of knowledge, similar to a knowledge synthesis grant. They are a state of knowledge on research capacity related to each of these 6 areas. And so we're analyzing those as, again, another complement to getting a sense of what is the research capacity on in a particular area, what are the range of insights within that particular research capacity area. Because of course, as I mentioned, the 6 challenges are quite broad. So where is our particular strength as it relates to a particular challenge area? And then in going forward, and we certainly look to our research community to help us with this, because we do also recognize that significant research is being done that is also not funded by SSHRC. And so what are the opportunities to be inclusive, to be able to bring in other partners, other also research partners, and to be able to facilitate these connections? And so we'll be looking to create on a virtual platform, virtual communities of interest, if you will, that can thrive and continue to collaborate 24/7, but at the same time that we're at SSHRC able to work with opportunities and take advantage of certain opportunities by working with particular communities on, as I say, particular initiatives. So an engagement promotion is going to continue. It's going to be significant through the use of social media, through the use of all of our corporate activities, but also those of our community and our SSHRC leaders. So these 3 key areas, the program architecture implementation, all the facet of that, the data and content analysis, as well as our ongoing engagement and promotion and listening and understanding how these challenges are resonating with with audiences across all sectors, will help formulate that strategy, which will be presented to our Governing Council in November. So just on our last slide, how will we know we are succeeding, or what really will be the framework for our measures of success? And keeping with our principles of simplicity, we see that as being 3 areas, and they resonate with what a little bit, or repeat rather a little bit, what I've been describing here, is getting a sense of our research capacity on a particular challenge area, and understanding that across not only within the field, but also starting to look at what's emerging from our students moving forward. And then getting a sense of what the insights really are as they relate to the needs of particular stakeholders. And at the same time, understanding the research capacity and the link to the range of insights is also very important. And then finally, most importantly, not most importantly, but equally importantly, is the knowledge mobilization. And to Marilyn's point at the start in her introductory remarks, SSHRC is absolutely committed to knowledge mobilization, not only in terms of corporate activities. We've incorporated now knowledge mobilization as a criterion in all project proposals, all grants proposals, and we see certainly the engagement through the Storytellers Challenge, really the potential here to facilitate and enable research knowledge to benefit those communities and those users, but also the model of co-creation to enable insights that really, from the get-go, are helping to address the need. So that is, in a brief overview, where we are at SSHRC as it relates to Imagining Canada's Future. And we just, again, want to really thank Marilyn and Royal Roads for, right from the start, the enthusiastic engagement. And we look forward to continuing to working with you. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ursula. I have a mic here, which, can you hear me? No. Dave, help. Oh, here we go. Now, can you hear me? Do you know how this works, Vanessa? Okay. Oh, I get that. Oh. So she's covered a lot of territory, but there's been a lot of lived territory to cover. So, We need to use the mic, not to hear each other, but so Ursula can hear us. What impressions, comments as well, are arriving at you? I'll talk about our website shortly, but just while Ursula's here with us, if we could hear from you about what you would like to hear from her. Comments? I want to also add that we're very pleased to have our academic vice president and provost here, Steve Grundy, and one of our 4 Canada Research Chairs, Brian Belcher. Just for you, your information.
George is here.
I'm sorry, George. Welcome. You came in later.
I'm just wondering if you have any general comments that you can make in relation to this initiative in relation to smaller universities. Smaller universities on the West Coast in the Pacific.
On Vancouver Island, actually.
I'll try to be as general. Well, certainly this is a very inclusive initiative. There's opportunities for all institutions and faculty and students, administrators, all to play a critical role because as I said, there's no funding formula, large, small institution, and clearly Rural Roads and your connection to the community, it's really, and the work that already has been built is really an opportunity to leverage those relationships and see how best and what works for you, what's relevant for yourself as it relates to either the challenges or the initiative overall.
Other comments? Ursula, can you see? Could you introduce yourself?
Can you see?
No. I can see.
Well, you can see in general. Okay. I'll come to the front. I'm Sylvia Vilches. I am actually the chair of the Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Scholars, but I'm actually here as a MyTax postdoctoral fellow, working with Ron Lindstrom in the Center for Research. Where is Ron? There. Oh, I walked behind you twice. Sorry. I have a couple questions about the priority areas. When I've looked at the funding applications in the past, I've been a bit confused about how to manage the application itself and the identification of the target area. And maybe if you could just speak to what you see when you see excellent proposals that address those very well. And then I have a follow-up question about the big data, unless someone else has another question.
Sure. Well, what's clearly going to be different here, and hopefully that alleviates some of the complexities of the application process, is that there will no longer be priority areas described on the website. So you will not see priority area A, B, C, D, E, and tick a box. And there's no references to alignment. So it truly, truly is based on the excellence of the proposal. And the merit review process and the adjudication process is based on the excellence of the proposal and not aligned with any research priority area. The reference, so one may say, well, then who's going to care? Because I have been asked that question a few times, because it is truly that shift. But it goes back to the principle that we recognize the excellence of scholarly work in social science humanities that is contributing to insights in these areas, and no thumbs on the scale approach is a very important opportunity to recognize that fact. So hopefully that will clarify that issue of, well, do I align my proposal with a priority area? Do I tick a box? Is there a better opportunity for me if I do? That is completely being removed. So we're not renewing priority funding areas with now 6 challenges. Priority areas are gone. 6 challenges are there as a recognition that these are important for Canada. And you are encouraged to look at these but in no way will they be an evaluation criterion for your proposal.
Okay.
Oh, and can I just add one point, because you did mention grad studies. So, and I should have mentioned this, one of the opportunities that we're looking at here is to also potentially, because we are a small team here at SSHRC, and very ambitious, we seem to get a lot of things done, and we consistently seem to be given administrative duties for large tri-council programs, which we're very flattered with, because obviously it's a testament to our ability to do so and do so well. But one opportunity here is potentially finding opportunities for postdocs, both humanities and social sciences postdocs, to work with us in each of these areas. And maybe we're looking currently at the postdocs that are funded at SSHRC, or by SSHRC rather, to see if there's an opportunity to provide some oversight, if you will, or participation in this initiative in that way.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Anyone else? You had another question?
Give me a mic. So I should come up here to stand up here? Yeah. I have to say that we had an opportunity through the Canadian Association of Postdoctoral Scholars to work with SSHRC. It was very impressive. So thank you. I have a question about the big data, the focus or the collective interest in the research community on big data. And when you say that, is there a possibility of a bias would be the wrong word, but an interest trending towards quantitative analysis, or is this also a social interest in the evolution of the role of data in our society and the many technological platforms that are changing our world? Just if you could talk a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, certainly in terms of the latter, that's a fundamental principle, absolutely. And certainly we fund actually quite a lot of research in that area. The efforts right now, I would say, are quite concerted in terms of providing a framework for data management plans. And the fact that SSHRC has played the leadership role in this addresses your other question a little bit, because absolutely recognizing qualitative data and quantitative data is critical. And that also is in the context of evaluating and measuring impacts of research in our fields, the issue of qualitative data. And so there is a consultation document that was issued by SSHRC, but on behalf of all of the councils in the fall. And the results of that have now refined the document somewhat. And we discussed that quite a bit at SSHRC Leaders, and Marilyn will be able to brief you on that as well. And so that will be circulated again, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. And if you feel that there are other elements that should be addressed at some point, whether it's right from the start or at the appropriate time, please do let us know. I mean, this is a very transparent process. It's a very complex process or issue, as we all recognize, the issue of data management and repositories. And so we've tried to take a systematic approach and take an iterative approach. So where we can set a framework that is manageable at this time, given all of those complexities and all the players, to then move it forward. But there is a recognition of qualitative data is certainly there.
Okay. Other comments? I actually think that the work that SSHRC is doing in the direction that you hear, and the way that funding is going, and also even the way that Connecting with the World is going, is really something that Royal Roads knows a lot about. We're a completely interdisciplinary and applied university, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us to really show how we connect with the world necessarily in what we do. So we're hoping this little beautiful little university on the edge of Canada is going to show up across the country in our strength suit, which is what you're taking us to, Ursula. I want to just quickly talk about the BC region, and Ursula, feel free to pop in here When we provided a report to SSHRC, as did 5 other regions in the country, we had talked to 150 people, and I must say that it was a bit of a gargantuan challenge because the thing only started in May and it had to finish in September. Worked with UBC, SFU, VIU, University of Fraser Valley, I think we were 5 universities, who then pooled together our chats with multi-sector leaders as well as our colleagues. In fact, there were more people from outside the university contributing to our regional report than those within, which of course we have easier access to each other. So we did that, and we had a bit of, so we engaged fully in the process that Ursula described to you earlier, but we had actually some cash left over. And there is a real interest in following up, continuing the work we did. Because in actual fact, one of the unintended but delightful consequences of our consultation in BC was people said, "What's SSHRC?" There were a lot of people, and interestingly in the business sector especially, who didn't know the Social Science and Humanities Research Council, where, by the way, their scholarship is funded. Anyway, I think people are very appreciative of the opportunity of hearing about SSHRC and also being more connected with possible sources of knowledge and innovation that would benefit what they're doing. So it was quite an exciting experience, and we wanted to try to see if we could continue that. This is a very small initiative based on some leftover cash, which SSHRC graciously enabled us to use to produce a website, and I frankly I learned more of things that I never intended to learn in this project than you can imagine. But essentially the purpose of the website is, this is a basic version, so it's very academically oriented, very university oriented. Our intent is, if this is a valuable thing, that we would probably be able to build on it with support from other universities, possibly from SSHRC, to say, let's run a pilot at making an effort to say, link people in BC, multi-sector people, leaders in BC, to scholarship, and particularly scholarship in our region. So this is what the point of this website is, and we have 2 people that we're using as experimental scholars. One of the things is you can click on the website. I think this will work on this, I hope. Yep. So we have that. These are the 4 cross-cutting themes that Ursula described. And so we've structured the website after that, and we've described kind of the area of governance in institutions, values, culture, inclusion and diversity.
Sorry, Marilyn, can I just interrupt? Can you just, for those who may be viewing it online, what is the actual address of the website?
www.livestream, all one word, .com/Royal Roads, I think. Oh, is she? Yep. I'm not sure. I don't think I have. It's not, Ursula, it's not a website that's up on the internet open yet because it's not complete.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's why I'm showing it here. So sustainable resilient communities was one, and we talked about that, and then creativity, innovation, and prosperity. So we intend to try to get examples of scholars who are producing work in each of these areas, and also link people around the province to those areas and those scholars who would be interested. And it's a big, big project, which we will only be able to do if we get a lot of interest to do that. Now, so let's look. Ann Dale's is the most developed one, because I have developed a neck issue, which I think comes from this website construction business. So I didn't get Ron's complete, but let's just give you an example of what's possible here, even on a basic website. So Ann Dale, we want to go to Ann's page. And it really describes her, it's not just a list of her publications, it's not just a list of her projects, but it's about what is it that she is trying to do. What is important to her about her work and what's important to her team. We can also, this is tricky because I can hardly see these hyperlinks, but it also is a way to link people. I think I'm going to go over here and I'll it also is helpful to link to her website in very specific ways. E-dialogues, Ann's got an amazing invention going on there. Here's her full statement of what she's about, which is really quite wonderful, and and her commitment to the environment and sustainable development and why that's been so important to her. It also connects to various aspects of her project. Whoops, page not found. There's a link missing. And so various huge projects that she's been partnered with other people to bring about. And also it is a way to describe her team. So the people that she has, her Canada Research Chair has supported over this period of time, one of whom is our own Chris Ling as Director in Environment and Sustainability here at Royal Roads. And then there's the other part of the website is that we can provide, of course, here's our event right here, events and news. But I think the most important thing that I wanted to put out to us here is, that there's a real need to connect the wonderful things that's going on here at Royal Roads, but at other universities as well. And the hope is that we would have an archive, like, on this website, when we'll feature people in each of those 4 areas, but then we'll add others, so there will be always an archive of people. And then I have learned the biggest issue is that this is a big job in itself, for me at least, somebody who doesn't know about websites, but the other thing that's really important is, and more tricky, is how do we get the connections to the people who would want to know about this? Now, I'm going to be in Sweden, hopefully in a couple of weeks, talking to a community up halfway to the north of Sweden, who I'm going to be able to connect with this website, and I'm hoping to connect with Ann's e-dialogues, because what we're doing here in Canada has a lot to do with the challenges out there, but these are the kind of social processes that we need in order for social knowledge to have the impact that it could. So I'm really, Ron has a whole other network of people, incredibly connected in to various health organizations across the country and in BC. But those will all be available for people to see, and we'll be able to see those networks. So it's this is just like, I would say, step 1 of a possibility. But really, I think there's a lot of energy at SHRC and among other SHRC leaders to do something different, Social science isn't an art form. It's really, most of us intend to have some kind of practical impact and practical value to it. So I encourage your thought about this. And Ursula, I would like to say that we would want to talk to you about it, because I think there is a connection. Maybe you could make some linking comments here. There's a way in which this could link up with your aspirations at SHRC, and maybe you could give us a sense of
Well, absolutely. I mean, we certainly in the last few years have been able to leverage social media tools and websites, and this initiative is about strengthening those connections in intended and unintended ways, and that is a reflection of how our lives are, and we through this initiative and our ability to then leverage your activities is going to get a better sense of what those possibilities are. As a federal granting agency, we support research across the country, and with this initiative, what we hope is that there will be a stronger connection with scholars to be able to share their insights to advance particular issues that much further. The time is really right for this initiative at this time. The growing recognition for the value of social sciences and humanities to creating better policies, to creating better, more stronger businesses and stronger communities is truly being recognized. We see that every day here at SSHRC. The call to our community to be part of the solution. So with tools such as your website and opening those connections both nationally and internationally, I think there's a lot of potential here that can be fueled that much faster and appropriately, and then it'll help us gauge where we need to create greater emphasis or greater effort. I use the analogy often of, if we have 6 planes on the tarmac for 6 challenges, they're not necessarily all taking off at the same time to the same destination. And so through this website, we have a better sense, for example, of number one, what the interests are from different communities that you perhaps didn't even anticipate, at the same time as leveraging the relationships that you already have. And then taking advantage of certain opportunities in the short term while recognizing there's work to be done in the long term. So how best to gauge your efforts in that regard.
One of the things that we ran into in doing the consultation across BC was that there are a number of organizations out there that think of themselves as creators of knowledge. And, so there's a kind of interest in kind of opening up the conversation, not as a kind of a big chunk of knowledge from universities to be moved out, but rather relationships to be created in generating knowledge and innovation that benefits from both the strengths of universities and the various agencies and institutions that are also reaching for new ways to do things and new ways to think. Anybody want to make any comments or suggestions or? Yeah, Ron, our first candidate for governance and institutions, is.
Thanks, Marilyn. Most of us in health, and I have to speak for health, that's really all I know, and decision makers in particular are more aligned with CIHR and more accustomed to funding from that perspective. How is the word getting out to the decision makers on the ground across the country in terms of this momentum with SSHRC, and where is that being advertised, and how do they come to know about this as opposed to coming from the researchers to them?
Okay. Ursula, this is a tricky question.
Yeah. Well, it's not tricky at all, because clearly through our work at SSHRC, certainly, and through what our networks, and it's inclusive of the research community, but also our partners, our governing council. We are all ambassadors, if you will, for the social science humanities. We do the very best that we can with our team here, and if we look, and I don't mean to tap the horn of the communications division here, but it is just a remarkable team, that we've been able to leverage the resources we have very effectively to connect with those decision makers. And we do that in a variety of ways. We do that from traditional means in terms of working in media relations, and we've seen media coverage on social science humanities, SSHRC-funded research increased by 150% in the last 4 years. Our connections with members of parliament, with policymakers, with decision leaders in the private sector. So, but it's not all up to SSHRC either. And so in that regard, we've ensured that whatever we do in partnership. And then at the same time, we leverage particular activities. So I mentioned the knowledge synthesis grant. So that was a funding, a grant funding opportunity. But we want to ensure that when we actually release the findings, that we had a strong mobilization activity right from the start. So we engage policymakers and decision makers right from the start to say, how will this benefit you? And so that's the engagement across all sectors is an ongoing priority for us. And any ideas that you have that can support this collective vision, this collective goal, we're open for ideas, absolutely.
Okay, we'll be back to you. I think if there are no more questions or comments from here, just at the moment, let it all sink in. Ursula, I want to thank you so much for setting aside this time to be with us.
My pleasure.
From a distance, and it was a pleasure to have you here and to hear in detail about what is happening at SHRC and where we're going. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all
really
for coming today. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have. I think there are also people on live stream, so if there are questions, I can probably, or the research office too, here can field them around SHRC funding and the events and activities that are going forward. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye.